A fun hike in the woods turns into something a little more concerning when you realize you're lost and you're not sure how to get back, but not to worry. You found a mysterious house in the woods. It has strange decorations, but you're desperate, so you head inside. What could be waiting?
What's that? You want to be scared? Come with me. You will experience tales of horror, ghosts, and death. It is not recommended for the weak at heart. Listen in the dark. It's more fun that way. This is Weekly Spooky.
Hello, my spookies. It's Wednesday, and you know what that means. It's time for a little spooky in your weekly. I'm your host and narrator, Enrique Couto, and we have quite the show for you. But before we get to that, I just want to say thank you so much for listening to the show. I really do appreciate it. I'm happy to have you here as we get ready for the Halloween season to arrive. It's almost here, my friends. Fall. I can hear the leaves crunching beneath my feet already. And this story will help you prepare, so make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcasting app. That way you don't miss a thing, because in October we're going to be publishing so much spooky content. And while you're at your favorite podcasting app, why not leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts? It makes a huge difference. It helps new spookies find the show. And if you want to spend more time with all the spookies like our contributing writer today, Bruce Haney, just go to Facebook and type in Weekly Spookies Tomb of Terror. I assure you'll have a great time sharing memes, scary stories, news, and so much more with all your other fellow spookies. But now, my friends, it's about time that we head into the woods. The forest is often unassuming, but when nighttime comes, all of a sudden the threats that you never imagined begin to permeate throughout your entire imagination, making you wonder what's behind that bush, what's up in that tree, or in this story, what is in the house in the middle of the woods? Why is it here? And is anyone there that can help me? Or are things about to get a whole lot worse? We're going to tell that story after these quick words from our sponsors. The House in the Woods by Bruce Haney. Dear Sarah, I hope you never have to read this letter. You know all my stories and secrets, except for this incident. I never told you about it because I don't like to think about it. Even in my own mind, I try to pretend like it never happened. The sights I saw feel impossible to have been true. It was in my 27th year that I came upon that house. It was while I was hiking alone in the Alder Creek forest. Rumor had it that an old abandoned village was deep in the woods, a village whose prosperous years ended some hundreds of years ago when the town of Shaniko became the wool capital of the world, and no one needed the wool from the town of Alder any longer. A similar thing happened to Shaniko a few years later when people again found wool cheaper elsewhere. But that is not this story. That isn't my story. My story is about the first time I searched for Alder and found a different place. One not found on any map, a place I plan on going again tomorrow. But before I go, I felt I should write up my experience in case I don't make it back. I am writing this just so that you know what happened. I plead to you. Do not come to look for me or send anyone to find me. As I told you before, it was many years ago that I ventured into these woods. I hope that enough time has passed since I was last out there that it will now be safe, because I am in desperate need of what I found out there. I could save you, dear. Only for you would I ever think of entering into those woods again. Only the love I have for you. I am scared of how scared I am. Even to write this down, I am trembling. But I must get this written, as the night is passing so quickly, and soon it shall be time to journey once again into those woods. It was a bright, sunny day when I first went looking for alder, and I was feeling quite optimistic about my journey. I brought my pack, a small tent, and I was using a map I found in an old book called Ghost Towns of the Northwest to guide me. I mentioned the town of Alder, but I never actually found Alder. I got lost and way off track. I worried that I was lost as I had walked at least 3 miles past the distance I was supposed to have been walking. It was getting near dark when I came across something peculiar. All the way out there, deep in the woods, where no man would need to wander, I came across a carved jack-o'-lantern. It was a misshapen pumpkin. It was taller than it was round, much like a human head, but larger overall. It was oddly shaped and more bulbous on the left than the right, which made its single-toothed smile look like the grotesque, rotten mouth of an elderly man who was suffered a stroke. Inside I could see something shiny. My curiosity took hold of me, and I bent down to give the ugly thing a closer look. The first thing I noticed was the eyes were unlike any I had ever seen carved into a gourd before. Each spot where an eye would be was 4 holes, giving it the appearance of having 8 eyes. After examining the mouth and then the eyes, I looked upon the nose with greater concentration. Something seemed off. When I touched it, I noticed some movement behind. Before I could react, I realized what it was. But it was too late. The pumpkin was home to a nest of spiders that quickly made their escape out of the pumpkin and up my arm. I ripped off my coat and threw it as far as I could before starting the task of wiping off the remaining spiders from my arm. Then I stopped, because I was stunned. I glanced at the pumpkin and saw that the top of it was rising up and off. I was in such a state of fear that I just stood there watching while a giant spider squeezed out of the pumpkin. It was the scariest thing I had ever seen up to that point. Imagine a black spider the size of a baseball glove that is dripping with pumpkin guts. I continued to stare until the spider turned and looked right at me. I must have run 2 miles before I finally felt safe enough to stop, and then I only stopped long enough to catch my breath. Now that I was even deeper in the woods and completely lost, I decided it was best to try to head back out of the woods. I could find alder another time. I figured it would be about 3 hours of hiking to get back to where I had entered the woods. But after walking 100 feet back, fog rolled in all around me. It would have been truly foolish to try to find my way back through the dense mist. So, with disappointment, I gave up on trying to make it out of the woods that night. I set up my small tent and climbed inside, and right before I went to sleep, I remember thinking, God, please don't let that spider find its way to me. I was awoken in the middle of the night when I heard a sound that was much like a door slamming. My brain was full of questions. Was that a car door? Am I that close to the road? Am I so lost that I'm nearly out of the woods? I broke down my tent, packed up, and then made my way towards the noise. Luckily, the fog had lifted some, For the moment at least. I started to think that maybe the sound had just been in my head, but then I saw a light in the distance. Then the scent hit me. It was fire. Oh my God, the woods are on fire, I thought. They must be. I'm way too far out in the woods for there to be someone else out here. But of course, there was that horrible pumpkin. Someone had carved that ugly thing. I walked slowly in the direction of the fire. Step by step, I listened until I arrived just outside of the clearing and the blaze of the fire. The woods were not on fire. I was relieved that this was a human-created, controlled fire. It wasn't that cold out, but I certainly missed my coat, so I approached the fire and stood there for a bit to warm up. I hadn't seen a person yet, but I noticed other queer things around. There was a chair that was crude in appearance. It was made from scraps of trees. The base was a log and the back support was made from branches nailed to it. Behind the big flames of this bonfire, I could see a house. Well, a house is a bit of an exaggeration. It was somewhere in between a shack and a house. I walked around the tree line to get a better view of the structure. It was old. The architecture was unlike anything I had ever seen. The roof was completely flat, and the house had more windows than walls. Windows that fogged and cracked from age. Some of the cracks in the windows had been filled with dirt or clay. The place gave me the creeps, and a feeling of dread swept over me, especially when I spotted more of those jack-o'-lanterns. There must have been a pumpkin patch around there somewhere. I was afraid that they would contain more giant black spiders. God, I may never sleep soundly again after this trip, I had thought. Instead of running, I found myself approaching the house, thinking that maybe the occupant could help me find my way out of these woods, or at least provide a shelter for the night where I wouldn't have to worry about giant arachnids. Before knocking, I decided to peek through the window. The inside was nicer than I would have imagined. It was filled with old furnishing, but not as weathered as the outside of the house. An antique collector would be ecstatic to come across such a find. There was a beautiful old couch and chair set. Both were covered in velvet with detailed carvings in the wood. There was also what looked to be a solid oak table, but what really drew me in was an ancient-looking trunk that was covered in tan leather similar to the color of human skin. It wasn't made with the same craftsmanship as the other furnishings. The seams were big and black and went all over the place like it was made from scraps of skin. I was about to walk to the door when I saw the inhabitant enter the room. I could only see the right side of his face, but the man looked as old as that trunk with skin that looked just as leathery. He had unkempt hair and an even longer beard. He walked over and opened the trunk, and inside it was full of what appeared to be gold and silver coins. I stood there awestruck until he turned to me. I was shocked by his appearance. The right side of his face was sloped, just like that pumpkin. His smile revealed just one tooth, and yes, just like that pumpkin, he had 8 eyes. I have never been so scared in my life. That is until a moment later, when his extra 2 arms and 2 legs sprung out of his body, tearing apart his fake skin suit, revealing him to be a giant, ugly, black spider. I ran at an Olympic gold medal winning pace out of those woods. When I finally got out, I was miles from my car. I never went back for that car, and I never went near those woods again. I know a bigger man would have gone back for all that gold, but it wasn't worth losing my life or even just seeing that thing again. That was enough of a deterrent. But now, Sarah, my wife, you are sick, and the operation is more than we can afford, so This is my only choice. Really, it is no choice. I love you more than I care for my own safety. Hopefully, I make it back. Hopefully, this is not the last sentence I will ever write. Big thank you to Bruce Haney for tonight's story, and I want to mention he's a listener turned contributor. He's contributed several stories now, they've all been great, and before that, he was an avid listener of the show. Thank you, Bruce, and if you want to send in a story of your own and see if you've got what it takes to entertain the spookies, send it to weeklyspooky@gmail.com. It's also worth mentioning Bruce has made a name for himself writing about local history, and the title of his most recent book is Eccentric Tales of Boring, Oregon. You gotta love that. Apparently that is the name of the town. It's not just a type of Oregon that some people would find less than enthusiastic. So check that out if you get a chance wherever you read your books. If you like local folklore, local history, and you want to support a listener of the show, Eccentric Tales of Boring, Oregon. And if you love what we're doing here at Weekly Spooky and you want to support us in a very direct way, we have a Patreon with nearly 90 spookies keeping everything going, and you can join at weeklyspooky@gmail.com. Just like these fine folks, there are Patreon podcast boosters, folks who pay just a little bit more to hear their names at the end of our shows, and they are Johnny Nix, Bobbletopia.com, Megan Hua, Julia Kirsch, Brent McCullough, Steve King, Karen Wiemet, Jack Kerr, and Craig Cohen. Thank you guys so much for supporting us, and if you want to join that illustrious list of names, just go to weeklyspooky.com, click on Patreon, and sign up for $15 or more, but for as little as $1 a month, you get bonus episodes every single month and so much more. But now it's time for me to get out of here. It's almost my birthday, dear spookies. If you want to get me a little gift, at weeklyspooky.com, there is a link to my Amazon wishlist, but your presence is truly a present. So for myself, for my producer Dan Wilder, my executive producer Rob Fields, and our composer Ray Mattis, I'll talk at you real soon.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to find your way back next week. But for now, you are safe. Trust me.